Hey guys, Bump here, bringing you this 10.2 Unholy Death Knight Clawing Wounds Mythic Plus guide. Now this is something special. I've been running this build a couple of times the last couple of days, and it feels, I don't know, it feels different, it feels fun, it's, I don't know, something new that I like to kind of try out. To start off, I would just like to show you, here's my damage breakdown at the end of this run here. This is a 23 Waycrest mana, fortified. And just look how much damage Clawing Shadows is doing. It's absolutely insane. Before I get into, the guide parts, we're going to talk about talents, gear, and rotation. Just like to say that this is probably not optimal. This build, it does slightly more AoE than your standard disease build, but significantly less single target. Is like an 8% single target loss doing this. So it's only the AoE bit that matters here. Still, I like to have some alternatives. So I think, honestly, this build, it does damage very quickly. So there's very little setup, which means that it's probably good to run it in lower keys, for instance. Because normally, when you run the disease build, which is our standard Myth Plus Unholy build, stuff just dies too quickly. However, with this build, you kind of do damage really quickly, which means that you can get more of that damage out before your Demon Hunter or Beastmaster or whatever you're running with actually comes in and annihilates the pack. So that is a definite benefit of this build. Now, to start off, let's talk about the talents. So I got them up here. This looks like your old classic rune build. However, there's an important distinction here. So we're actually not picking up Vile Contagion. And you might think that, hang on, that seems a bit weird. I thought Vile Contagion was great. However, the thing is that Vile Contagion, yes, it works really well in AoE on a 1.5 minute cooldown. So on those pools where you just do a gigantic, you do a big one every 1.5 minutes, it's going to do really well, right? However, it does literally 0 damage in single target. So to balance that out, we actually do not pick the Vile Contagion, and instead we go for Ghoulish Frenzy. This gives you a bit more single target. It's still really bad, but it's better than nothing, right? And it just ends up being generally a bit better, I think. It's a choice to make, but I liked not having Vile Contagion. It actually felt pretty good to play. So, up to you. It seems better to do Ghoulish Frenzy at least. When it comes to the other talent choices, like there isn't that many. You would love it if you could pick out more kind of single target, but there really isn't space to do so. Like if you were to sacrifice Pestilence or Bursting Source, that's a big downgrade because Bursting Source still does like 10% of your overall damage. So it's not as big as the Claw Shadows part, but it's still a lot of damage. When it comes to the class specific tree, I'm running like a defensive version here of this build where I pick up Willowed Acropolis. I do need to sacrifice 1 point in Holy Bond to do so, but damn, you get so tanky. It's a personal thing. I always run it because I'd rather, not die. Because you do get effectively 16% more max health, and it reduces a lot of damage when you're low on HP, which is really good because that's when you usually die, right? It's up to you. Like, if you play well, you won't need it, but I like to have it as a bit of a extra defensive kind of aspect there. Other than that, we do pick up Grip of the Dead. That is, I don't know. You could obviously pick up Lichborn, which is nice. No, not Lichborn. I can't remember his name. The thing that turns Lichborn into a bit of a defensive spell. It's up to you. I'm running It's a Spiteful week, so this means that Grip of the Dead is really powerful. Because you pop that down with Spiteful Spawn, and they just kind of stay in their spot, because they are so incredibly slow. I don't know. Up to you. I like running Grip of the Dead, especially if your tank is kind of like moving out your Death and Decay. Obviously, with Claw Shadows, you don't really care, because only you need to stand on your Death and Decay. But still, we run Pestilence, so you do want the mobs to be in the Death and Decay to get the wounds on them, that kind of thing. Yeah, up to you, but that's definitely a choice to make. Right, let's talk about gear. So embellishments and trinkets primarily. When it comes to embellishments, I would definitely run the versatility wrists and then time that with something like lariat, haste legs, or blue silken. Um, which one of those? I think it depends on what kind of pieces you currently have, that kind of thing. I'm currently running Shadow Flame Patch because I'm geared for raid, right? But one of those three is definitely a choice. I would just sim in a dungeon slice environment to see what's best for you specifically. For the trinkets, it's a bit of a tricky one. So we can use both. There's two alternatives here. Either we have an active and passive combo, or we have double passive. So for the active, we either run mirror or the one from the three sides, Might of the Ocean, right? Might of the Ocean is quite nice. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown, so it always syncs up with Holy Assault. And it means that in dungeons where you get a lot of forced downtime, like in the Dawn ones where you're flying around, that kind of thing, you do tend to desync your army from your Unholy Assault, which is really annoying. And in those situations, it can be really tricky to actually get good value from mirror. However, in dungeons where you are constantly just going from pack to pack, it is definitely a good idea to run mirror as well. It sims really high, and it's a good trinket as a general rule. For the passive ones, we are looking for things that give us stats, passive stats trinkets, and there's generally 5 of them. We have a Pick, Accelerating Sandglass, we have Butcher's Block, Nightmare Eggshell, and then one more. It's up on the screen. I can't remember which one it is exactly, but there's 5 of them. Any of 2 of those work fine. If you have multiple, just plug those into your dungeon size sim and see which ones are best for you. All right, when it comes to stats, bit tricky. Stats do not matter that much, but I would definitely tend to have some balanced set of haste, mastery, and crit. It's a good idea. Versatility is generally below value, but again, you can just plug it into the dungeon slice and see what works best. As a general rule, if you have equal amounts of haste, mastery, crit, as in raw amounts, that's kind of like a good point to be at. But obviously, it depends on your current eye levels, different pieces, and so on. Don't put too much emphasis on it, but that's kind of like the recommendation there is. Cool, so that's all the setup, right? I plugged in my gear early on so you could see that. And yeah, let's talk about rotation. So up here, I have a details plugin called Action Tracker. It shows you what I've been pressing. And if you've been following along so far, you'll be seeing that there's a lot of clawing shadows being pressed. And that's going to be the primary button you'll be pressing in this build, because that's where most of your damage comes from. Anyway, let's talk about, okay, so how do we do damage? Well, we are going to do damage by standing in our defile and hitting claw shadows. Just raw claw shadows cleave does a ton of damage here. Furthermore, we'll do quite a lot of damage with bursting swords. Not necessarily because we are actively setting up festering wounds on the enemies, but because we have 2 passive ways of setting up wounds in AoE. We have Dark Transformation, which does Infected Claws in AoE, which will then apply to all the targets we're hitting. And we have Defile with Pestilence, also applying wounds. I will get into the manual application of wounds later, but that's generally where bursting source damage comes from. And then we have some other things like, Unholy Pact, Defile also doing some damage, but in general, it's all clawing shadows and bursting source, which is why it's called, clawing wounds, this build. Now let's talk about how we actually execute it. So when you go into a pack, let's see up here, we're going to start by putting out Defile. We'll do this because of 2 things. 1, to stack up the mastery buff we get from the Defile, and 2, to start applying wounds with the Pestilence. It's fine to pop it down instantly, because on any given pack, generally, we will be able to use 4 Defiles back to back. There's a bit of downtime between packs, so it kind of recharges, and the cooldown is so low, so it's kind of fine to commit the first one. You won't lose cast down the line because of that. Secondly, is use all the cooldowns. So you should start with Dark Transformation, use Unholy Blight, Unholy Assault if you have it. Make sure to get Apocalypse out quickly. So if you have Unholy Assault, you do Unholy Assault into Apocalypse. If not, you do Festering Strike into Apocalypse. That's to get the 4 set value, right? You want the Maguses to be out there. That's also, I forgot to mention that, that's a big part of your damage. Because this build spends so many runes, you will actually be extending your Maguses a lot, which means that they do tons of damage. Anyway, so you get the Apox out, pack out all the cooldowns. You would use Abomination Limb at this point as well if you have it. Once that's done, you go into your Clawing Shadows spam rotation. So, as a general rule, if you're in your defile and you can hit Clawing Shadows, you hit Clawing Shadows. And due to it costing 1 rune, you will be doing this a lot, right? You will overcap on rune power, and that is fine, right? We actually do not care much about overcapping rune power because we just want to spend those Clawing Shadows. Now, as a general rule, when you're done over cooldowns, you start your Clawing Shadow spam, your defile is going to run out because that's the first one that lasts for 10 seconds, right? So the best way to handle that is as soon as it runs out, well, your defile mastery buff is still going to have a couple seconds left on it. It's going to be 3 to 4 seconds. In that spam, where you still have the buff, but you don't have defile down on the ground, you want to spam Epidemic. Because during this time, you're actually not cleaving your Clawing Shadows, right? So you don't want to hit Clawing Shadows because it's very low value. So it's a great idea to bump your runic power. This also has the added benefit of giving you runes back, right? We have runic corruption, which when you spend runic power gives you runes on average. So defile, the ground effect goes away. You do 2-3 GCDs of Epidemic, which means that you refresh your runes and you get ready for the next window. So just before your mastery buff runs out again, you pop down defile and then you go into Clawing Shadow spamming again. Okay, of course, if you end up without any runes, you would fill in with Epidemic. So you're trying to hit Clawing Shadows, but you add the runes, hit Epidemic instead, and then go back to spamming those Clawing Shadows. And this is going to be the general vibe of most packs. You're also going to have Refresh your dot, of course, if it runs out, but you're going to be pop down defile, spam Clawing Shadows. When it drops, spam Epidemic for 2-3 seconds, pop down defile, spam Clawing Shadows again. Yeah? That's the vibe. All right, so that's obviously great if you have lots of defile charges ready, which will you normally have. So if you do properly and you use defile just before the mastery buff goes away, you would actually chain 4 defiles back to back. However, that will not be the scenario in every single pool because sometimes you chain pool and you end up with where you run out of defile stacks and one drops and you have like 4, 5, 6 seconds until the next one is available. At this stage, what we want to do is Fester tabbing. All right. So if defile isn't down, we're not going to be hitting Clawing Shadows. So we're going to be spending Epidemic, but we can't use that. We're actually going to tab through the target and use Festering Strike. And this sets up for your next defile window because it's going to build lots of wounds. So you then pop down your next defile. Well, when you hit Clawing Shadows, that's going to burst lots of wounds, which is going to give you lots of damage. As I said, this only really happens when you've run out of defile stacks. So it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, that's the kind of thing you want to do. So you set up for your next defile window, which is going to be, 5-6 seconds away. All right, when it comes to using cooldowns, just press them as much as possible, right? Unholy Assault, every 1.5 minutes, just run it. Blight, DT, Apocalypse, every 45 seconds. It's really important that you actually make sure to use these cooldowns so that you make the most out of them. Same thing with Army. I just send out a cooldown. That is by far best tip to just, if you have the big cooldown ready, just go with it because its cooldown is so low. You'll be surprised how quickly 3 minutes go by in a Mythic Plus run, honestly. There are certain scenarios where you would hold it. So, if you know it's going to be a boss, you're going to have Bloodlust and it's there in 1 minute, obviously don't use Army, but otherwise just send it. Best advice there is. Cool, so that's the AoE rotation. How do we actually do this in single target? Well, in single target, you play very much like you would do in Raid. So you would use Defile by using it back to back for every Apocalypse window to get to buff up your ghouls and your main pet, right? Furthermore, outside of that, you would build Wounds Festering Strike, burst them with Claw Shadows, keep up your dot, and spend your rune power on Death Call. When it comes to using Death Call versus Epidemic, by the way, Epidemic is better at 3+ targets. So whenever there's like a big pool, you will always Epidemic. But if you're hitting only 2 targets, that's a Death Call scenario. You can't really mess it up because, it's not like the Unholy Raid rotation where there's a very distinct opener sequence, that kind of thing. Honestly, when you go into a pack, or on a boss, you would do Unholy Sword into Apocalypse and then just send the other cooldowns. And if you don't have Unholy Sword, you just do double Festa into Apocalypse. That's it. It doesn't really make a big difference exactly what order you do there. All right, so that's the rotation for you. I think this build is more straightforward than like the normal disease build, because there's honestly so much Clone Shadow spam. It's just pressing that button over and over again. Quite satisfying, especially on really big pools. Our passive wound generation from our pet and using Pestilence means we do insane damage. So I was doing some, I was doing like 2 million burst DPS when we were doing the Dawn of Infinite lower earlier. So can do a ton of damage. Anyway, at this point, we're going to do commentary of the run. I tend to forget some topics that I wanted to talk about, so probably going to give you some more insight. Other than that, we're just going to talk about the specific dungeon and how I approach each pack and so on. Okay. Anyway, so we have just killed the pig boss here, and we're going to move into the lower area. So I can't remember. I think this is a case of I can't remember if we wiped here, because we did a 22 earlier, which I think we wiped in this area, but probably not now. Obviously on this pack, I was just spending all my cooldowns. And you can see it, everything takes around like 30-40 seconds to kill, which means that even if I spent them here, I will have them for the next pack. That's why we want to use them on cooldown. You see there's lots of Clone Shadow spam here. I want to say, so obviously I'm running against a Demon Hunter. And Demon Hunter, at least when this video was made, were really, really powerful. And I can kind of keep up with him. He does beat me out on the overall in the end. But on Wednesday, from, that's the 5th of December, Unholy's getting buffed, Demon Hunter's getting nerfed. And I think if I had made this video after that, I would have definitely beat him. It's true that the buffs that come are not that beneficial to this build. Like, it's buffing Virulent Plague, it's buffing Epidemic, whereas this build leverages Clone Shadows. Still, we will see a nice benefit from it. Our pet is buffed, that kind of thing, and Epidemic is also a relatively big part of our damage still. So I would have done maybe 4-5% more, which and he would have done a bit less, maybe 4-5% less. So I would have beat him. However, it's quite evident. So on packs and such, I can definitely keep up. Like, I'm doing good damage, but as soon as we start hitting a boss, my damage is just really, really bad. It's one of the not so ideal things with playing Unholy DK. Our single target suffers heavily from picking up an AoE centric setup, right? Here we go. You can see here, Clone Shadows. 26.6% of my overall so far. I thought it was more, but yeah, that's fine. Another pack. Start with Defile. I think honestly, I use Dark Transformation too late here. You should use Dark Transformation like as soon as possible, because you will start building up wounds, which is really important for your opening burst. So I wasn't playing perfectly this run. There are a couple of things to improve. I wasn't properly doing, I talked about the Festa tabbing in between defiles when you start getting some cooldowns on the defiles. Wasn't doing that either. So I just started out, so I hadn't really figured out the exact sequence here. But we're still doing well. So I'm bursting like 360k here, and then it's gonna drop when we kill this Matron. There we go. You can see Magus is also dealing a ton of damage. As I said, so you can see my weak aura pack here. That has a component for Magus, and you can kind of tell how long they are up when I actually do use them, just because you're spending so many runes, right? But if they want the weak aura pack, I've recently moved to putting it in my Discord in the Twitch subscriber section, if you can't find it on Wagyu at the moment. Just a quick FYI. Alright, some smaller packs here. I think, alright, so the thing is that since we're not relying Epidemic to do damage, this is an advantage of a disease build, by the way. We don't need that many targets to actually do good damage. Like Clone Shadow scales linearly, so it does, per enemy the same amount of damage on 2 targets as it does on 8, and then it stops. It can't hit that many targets, right? Which means that I feel like this build does better on lower target pools. I'll actually have to sim that, and I'll confirm I'll put it in there if that's true, but it doesn't have that, you know, it obviously has the quadratic scaling with the wounds, but they are not that big part of the damage, and Clone Shadows is linear, so it benefits just on 2 targets. I'm just popping down the file and just doing the Clone Shadow spam. Same thing as before, because Clone Shadows deals so much damage. Alright, we're going to kill these 2 guys, and then we're going to move down and do a big pull before the penultimate boss here. Alright. Let's see. You can see me, I put my pet on passive. So the pet loves to get stuck on the Spiteful. To make sure he actually follows you, it's a good idea to put it on passive, make sure he follows you down. And then, there we go. Yeah, he was slow. Otherwise you end up with that scenario, right? Pet is 8 miles away. You pop in Dark Transformation and you see the fire kind of a chain, and it's like, you know, it's so far away. All right, as you can see, you know, the rotation, it's Clone Shadows, Clone Shadows, Clone Shadows, Dump Epidemics, Defile, Clone Shadows, Clone Shadows, Clone Shadows. Right, that's what we're going for. All right, we've got a Soul Volley going off here, unfortunately, but I have AMS to deal with that. All right, so now you can see I had a bit of downtime between my defiles, but I just spent some rune power in that period. As I said before, right, when your defile is down, defile is such a Clone Shadows is such a good button. You don't really want to be pressing anything else, but when defile isn't down, you want to make sure you do spend that rune power to make sure your next defile window is as powerful as possible. All right, defile is down. We're just hitting that good old Clone Shadows. All right. You can see here, everyone else died, I didn't, and it's partly due to me being so tanky. As I said before, so effectively, will an Acropolis add 16% to your max health? You can calculate exactly how big of a hit you need to take to die with an Acropolis, because what happens is that, well, 65% of HP is unmitigated, but all the damage taken below that gets mitigated by 35% health, so it needs to deal like a lot more damage in full to actually kill you. So that's a big benefit. As I said, 60% more max HP. I'm currently at 950k, I think. Oh, there we go, 1 million. So I get 160k more HP using that single talent. Obviously, it's a DPS loss. I think it's like 2% or something. So up to you. But generally, you generally don't miss out timing keys because you didn't do 2% extra damage, because you died too many times. Just dying once is like a huge DPS downgrade in a key. And as I said, you don't necessarily need it, as in, if you deal with all mechanics properly, it's nothing that will one-shot you in that way where you need that extra defensive. But in reality, when you're actually doing keys and pugging, you know, things will go wrong. That's just how it is. So anyway, up to you. Some people feel it's unnecessary. I quite like it. Yeah, do whatever you want to do and you feel it's best. All right, we just make sure we deal with this Waycrest dude as good as possible. All right, now we've got the lady down, and now we're going to be able to leverage our defiles. Unfortunately, a bit slow there with my defiles. You can see my defile buff. I have it down there. It dropped. So how it works, it stacks up 8 times to give you a stronger mastery buff. And if you refresh it before it actually goes away, you keep the 8 stacks. So you get a lot more value from that refreshed defile, which is why we play that kind of refreshing style. All right, Waycrest has stopped dropping relatively quickly. Let's see, did I miss my interrupter? I could have interrupted the cord for sure. Anyway, we have army 2 minutes, so I'm just gonna try and get that down because we have Bloodlust ready. I know we're gonna use that on the last boss, so ideally I would want to have it available. But on this boss, the Virulent Pathogen, if it targets you, you can pre-AMS it and it just immunes it. So that's a small little tip for you. All right, we're gonna jump down into the cracker and then make sure everything just spawns on us. I'm not sure why, but my defile there was very slow. It should have been the first GCD. Excuse me. You can see this pack, you know, it lost 10 seconds, but I'm still able to burst heavily just because my burst comes out so quickly. There's no real setup at all, which is a really nice thing to have. All right, chaser going down. I'm gonna make sure my pet hopefully follows me here. The tank, he is on it, so no time to sit and wait. I can see here, so army is fine. I'm able to use it just like 5 seconds after we use Bloodlust, which is completely fine. Bloodlust lasts 40 seconds. Look at my pet, so bloody slow. It's also my bad, I should be controlling it better. Anyway, if you use army within 10 seconds of Bloodlust being popped, you will still get full value because army lasts for 30 seconds. So, you know, you will benefit. Army will have Bloodlust for the entire time it's up. I'm sending my defiles back to back here, buffing up my army, that kind of thing. I'm not sure if I use the next charge because I should be holding it, so I can use back-to-backs with my next Apocalypse, which I will do. All right, there we go. I pick up the little vial here that we used to burn up the Slayers. All right, so pop my cooldowns. We're going to use the file. Good thing here is to use AMS for when he does his big AoE. It's not the Dark and Lightning, but let's see, where is it? Dread Essence deals quite a lot of AoE damage, magical, so really good idea to use your AMS for that. When these die, you burn them up with using the little action button there, so they don't respawn when he does his Dread Essence. Because that brings all of them back to life, and heals them anything that's currently there to full. Alright, so I'm going to end this at around 230k overall. Slightly lower than the Demon Hunter, but I'm quite happy still be able to keep up. As I said, this is not likely to be better than your standard disease build. It's just something different and fun to play around. Potentially better in lower keys when there's really small or pulls that last for not very long. Alright, well, there you go. The Claw and Wounds build. What do you guys think about it? Leave a comment down below, let me know. Upvote, downvote, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.